My thoughts to the suspension or the of the racing and training. Uh, I'm very happy about it. I'm very much in support of it. Obviously, we've had a number of catastrophic injuries. Uh, one catastrophic injury is one too many. But when you have a string of them, it's definitely a real problem. So I'm very glad that they suspended racing and training in as much as we can now, or everybody can try to figure out what the problem is. So we have a look, we have the opportunity to figure out what the problem is and to fix whatever that problem may be. If there is a single problem, I don't think there is. I don't think there's a smoking gun. I think it's a multifactorial issue, but I think as an industry and as, a veterinarian and a horseman, we want to figure out what the problem is and prevent these as much as we can.
One thing that we've been hearing is the concern about the track, and especially with the rainy weather we've been experiencing, that they may be a contributing factor. You said that, of course, there could be many reasons for the injuries resulting in the animals being euthanized. From your perspective, what do you think could be the reason behind it?
Well, I don't know the one single reason. Like I said, I think it's multifactorial. This this year, first 2 months of racing, we've had a lot of weather. We've had a lot of wet weather. We've had a lot of rain. We've had a lot of cold temperatures. When we get the rain and the moisture, what they do is they seal the racetrack to prevent the track becoming sloppy and unsafe. What people have to realize is, dirt is it's not static. Dirt is a material that's, always changing in some form depending on moisture, temperature, pressure on it. So you have to recognize the fact that, dirt is affected by climate, climate being the amount of rain, the amount of cold temperatures we've had. So that all plays into how that affects the consistency of the racetrack. And, the consistency of a racetrack is important. But when you have Mother Nature, who's a pretty powerful force, wreaking havoc on a surface like that, you've got to do all you can to ensure your maintenance protocols and your surface are consistent day in and day out. Unfortunately, that's sometimes hard to do because of the weather and because of the fact you're racing and training on it. So thereby, the suspension of racing and training at this point, I think, is a good thing. So, they can evaluate their management protocols. They can evaluate the surface even further. Dr. McPherson came out last week and looked at the racetrack and was happy with it. But management's looking into it further and see if we can figure out, is there a smoking gun or is there something we can fix that will reduce these number of injuries in the future?
What type of injuries have you heard or have you seen in the past 2 months in regards to some of these animals that have been put down? What have you heard?
Well, most of them are fetlock injuries. The filly that was euthanized yesterday, I actually put her down myself. My associate and I, Dr. Finley, we put her down. She was injured during the morning workout. Most catastrophic injuries will typically involve the fetlock or the ankle of the horse. If they involve the sesamoid bones, which there are two in each fetlock, which support the soft tissue suspensory apparatus, if the sesamoids are fractured to a point where they're irreparable, then the most humane thing to do for the animal is to go ahead and euthanize. A lot of other fetlock injuries have occurred, such as condylar fractures, things like that, which can be repaired via surgery, which we do here at the track. And those horses come back and race again. But I think our biggest number one injury that we see in catastrophic injuries are fetlock injuries, specifically sesamoid injuries.
Can you explain why euthanation is the usual the following result of an injury or severe injuries like this? Of course, we hear from animal rights advocacy groups saying they're against the races in general because it leads to injuries, and then the animal will have to be put down. And then some who don't know the world of horse racing or anything related to horses, they hear a broken leg or something like that, and then the animal has to be euthanized. They may not understand the reason for. Maybe people may think, why can't you put a cast on or do something else? Can you explain why euthanizing the animal is the usual option or the method?
So, okay, these horses are athletes, just like any other athlete, human or animal, and they will, they have to adapt to surfaces and things like that. More oftentimes than not, nowadays, especially with the advent of veterinary medicine, the advancement of veterinary medicine, I should say, more often than not, these horses are no longer euthanized. In other words, horses that were euthanized 25 years ago are now being saved, operated, rehabilitated, and either put back into training or into second career. The ones that end up having to be euthanized are catastrophic breakdowns because the injury is so severe that you can't simply put 1,000-1,200 pound animal in a cast without fixation of the fracture in order for it to heal. And say you and I break a leg or something like that, you can put it, you can put pins in it, you can put screws in it, you can plate it, put a cast on it and say, okay, stay in bed, stay off of it for 6 weeks. And you stay off of it for 6 weeks so it heals. It's impossible to keep a horse off of an injured limb for any length of time. And the majority of the reasons are twofold. Number one, if you did that and kept that horse immobile off of that leg, that would put increased pressure on the other limbs, which then sets that horse up for a disease called laminitis and founder, which is a much more horrific result. Secondly, if you were to take the horse and tell him, horse, don't keep all your weight off this limb and don't leave this stall for 6 weeks. There's a good, the way horses are, they're herbivores, they're constant grazers. You have an increased likelihood of colic and, again, a more horrific end result. So those fractures that can't be repaired or stabilized, today I think we're doing a lot more as far as orthopedic surgery to give those horses a second career or a better life as opposed to euthanizing. The ones that are euthanized are horses where there is no alternative to save that horse's life because every alternative is looked at in depth. An example, that filly that broke down Monday, we got her back. I radiographed her right there, and she had two fractured sesamoids. There was a rupture of the suspensory apparatus, so she would have been on 3 limbs, and those fractures would have never healed, and the likelihood of her making it was very minimal at best.
And how are
the same thing that applies to Battle of Midway when he broke down. Dr. Finley and I were both there, and we radiographed that horse, and there was no way that horse could have been saved surgically because of the amount of damage that was done to that fetlock and pasture. So if there is an opportunity to save, even if it's a glimmer of hope, we take that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you did have to put the horse down. How do you folks go about doing that? Is it similar to how if you have a dog or cat? I had to put down a cat once at the vets, and they administered a drug. How is it similar with horses?
It's the same procedure, and for the record, we do not shoot horses, but it's a similar procedure. The horses are anesthetized to some degree, and then they're administered a pentobarbital or an overdose of pentobarbital, and they go to sleep.
Now, PETA's president, they said after the closure, they said that it was the right thing to do. And if you could respond to this following quote, because I don't have that much knowledge about this, but she said, quote, the track should remain closed until the California Horse Racing Board dumps the drugs entirely, or injured horses whose soreness is masked by legally allowed medication will continue to sustain shattered bones. In horse racing, are horses given drugs to mask soreness or other injuries so they can race?
I would argue her comment, and as much as I don't agree with it for several reasons. When 8 Bells broke down several years ago, that triggered an incredible medication reform in racing. And I think that was 2012. So over the last 6 to 8 years, the racing industry has undergone an incredible medication reform, reducing therapeutic medications, reducing intra-articular corticosteroids, increasing withdrawal times, increasing testing methods, increasing out of competition testing. So I would disagree with that. Horses are on medications similar to you and I. Um, if you get a sore back, you'll take some Aleve or some Tylenol. If you've got an arthritic joint, you'll take some Cosequin. They're athletes. You have to look at them in the same vein as you and I are athletes and how we manage things. To say that these horses are drugged up and running with all this pain medication, in my opinion, is incorrect and ignorant. And if you look at the research in the last 6 to 8 years, and if you look at what the industry has accomplished regarding medication reform, I think we've taken medication reform out of the equation. It's not an issue. We have really, really reformed medication, and we did it on our own auspice that, you know what, we've got to clean up our own house. We don't need somebody to do it for us. So we've done that as a profession and as an industry. The medication reform has made a big difference. In fact, we were really happy to see with the reform medication, catastrophic injuries nationwide have been declining. In fact, California had the lowest level of catastrophic injuries that they've had in a long, long time in 2018. So this whole uptick is really kind of surprising, and it's frustrating and it's concerning. But we attribute a lot of that decline to medication reform.
How do you respond to PETA saying that it's renewing its call for criminal investigations into trainers and veterinarians who, quote, may have injured or put injured horses on the track leading to their deaths? How do you respond to their call for criminal investigations?
I think that's sensational public relations. I think it's embarrassing. I can tell you, everything I do, I have a medical reason for it, and I do it because the horse comes first. And the horse has to come first. So I think comments and allegations like that do nothing but create sensational opinions that are not based on fact.
All right. Lastly, where do we go from here? When do you expect or hope that the track reopens?
I don't know. Management is dealing with that. I know we're closed for training today and at least through tomorrow. My understanding is they brought Dennis Moore in as a consultant, who, as a track superintendent, I have a tremendous amount of respect for because he really cares about the horses. And I've worked with him over the years, and we always work together. And he is going to be the one that's going to go through it and evaluate it and say when it's safe. I don't know how long that will take. Could be a week, could be 2 weeks. I don't know. I'd be speculating. I think, the point of fact is, we need to solve whatever problem is in front of us. We just have to figure out what the problem is before we can solve it. So for time that takes, I think is, it's a small fraction of time. We race year round. Let's do this right, and let's get this right for the benefit of the horse and the riders. This affects us being the racing community, veterinarians, trainers, owners, hot walkers, grooms, riders. This affects us on a much, much deeper level than people recognize, because You know, everybody loves the horse. The horse is part of Americana, right? It's an icon. But you know, we live with these horses, you know, and they're part of who we are, and it affects us on a level that most people won't understand. You know, when I have to put that horse down yesterday, that affects me on an individual level. I do it because it's for the best interest of the horse, but none of us wants to see any horse get hurt, much less ever suffer a catastrophic breakdown. It's the worst feeling in the world.